And we're live.
Is to the point, is that my preferred destination?
Are you a free agent, Brian?
I don't know. Hell no. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, wherever you are, whatever time it is for you right now. Just know that you are locked on To The Point with
Skip
and the King. Shout out to my man, Andrew Reece from the Reece Report. Find him on Facebook and YouTube. Very informative. You'll see Skip on there very soon. Glad to have you back, Mr. Reece, because you know you're one of our favorites to keep coming on this show because you really do have some hot takes. And speaking of that, I gotta ask you something very controversial, because I know you ain't shy. Now, Goran Dragic getting acquired by the Toronto Raptors. He did say on TV that it was not his preferred destination, higher ambitions or whatever. I don't care. Now, right after that, chronologically, Bobby Webster was on TSN Overdrive, and they asked him about it, and he was not aware of that comment. Now, a couple hours later, Dragic retracted his statement and apologized and said that's not the way he said it. Now, with his initial reaction, Andrew, I gotta ask you, do you think he wants to be here? And do you think, well, you guys as Raptors fans should want him here?
Well, I was in favor of this move when this happened because I thought we could use a veteran point guard, to help this young team. I didn't want to have all kids on this team. And I thought with a guy in his contract year, he would play good for us and we'd either, be able to, trade him at the deadline when his value was higher. He's coming off a pretty injury-plagued season. So we weren't going to get much for him, I believe, in the offseason. Then he comes out and, of course, lost in translation in Croatia or wherever the hell he's from. He says, this is not my preferred destination. And I immediately went to the my page and said, this is tragic. And there's a reason I said it was tragic, because the next day the guy comes out and just reverses course faster than the train that goes to Tokyo and says, it's not about the city. It's not about the fans. It's not about the organization. They're one of the best ever. The biggest retreat agent statement you're ever going to see in your life. So therefore, lowering his trade value even more. So whether we like it or not, Mr. Tragic is going to start as a Raptor. What do you think, Skip?
I highly doubt that, because Skip, we've spoken about this on where he would be on this. You guys go check out our last video. So, Skip, I got to ask you, what went away from the Raptors in order for us to get Dragic, as Andrew Reece would say?
Tragic.
By the way, shout out Robert Misovic for correcting some guy on a YouTube video where he called him Dragic and he couldn't even pronounce his name. Shout out there. Skip, on the way out from the Raptors organization was that main man, that jersey that you might have to retire, which we've spoken about. You might have to put it in the background. We might have to see it hanging in the Raptors just like the Raps would do. Kyle Lowry went over there. So we've spoken about what the Raptors have received, but we have not spoken about what it is with the Heat. How do you think Kyle Lowry can fit in with the Heat, especially with that number 7? I hear you guys online, and I've seen a lot of Miami fans saying that he should not wear the number 7. We can get into that, but how do you feel about Lowry fitting in on the Heat?
Well, first of all, I'm just going to say I don't think the Dragic saga has finished. I don't know how it's going to resolve itself.
It's far from over.
There's a good chance he's going to get shipped out at some point, whether it's before the season or in season. When he made those comments, I was looking forward to Raptors fans booing him on opening night, but we'll see if it comes to that. As for Lowry and the Heat, I think this is kind of an interesting question, because I think a lot of people are looking at this and saying, okay, the Heat went out, they made the biggest move in free agency, they got Kyle Lowry. He was basically the biggest name to be moved this year because a lot of guys honestly didn't switch teams. There were a ton of guys that just re-upped with their old teams. So a lot of people are looking at this and getting really excited about the Heat making their big move. But I'll be honest, as much as I love Kyle Lowry, as much of a dog as he is, he's 35, 36 at this point. And I'm looking at that Heat roster and I'm seeing there is some talent there. There is a lot of doggedness. There's a lot of skill at the front end of that roster, but I kind of don't see how this team is that next level type of team. Because you look at their starting lineup. Okay, it's Lowry, it's Duncan Robinson, it's Jimmy Butler, it's Bam, and it's PJ Tucker. Okay, so that's 5 really good NBA players. That's a playoff team right there. You would assume, but it's also not a great shooting lineup. Like Jimmy's not a great shooter, Bam's not a great shooter, PJ Tucker's not a great shooter. And then you look down the rest of the roster, and what's left? I mean, Tyler Hero, Oladipo's coming off an injury though. Like, what are you really going to get out of him next year? Like, they got him back for the minimum because he just wants to recoup a little bit of value. Like, I don't think they're banking on him for anything. I don't see the depth on that team. I think they're not a great shooting team. I mean, they have some good shooters that they can put out there, but up and down the roster, they're not a great shooting team. They're going to be feisty on defense. They're going to be a really good team. They're going to be tough to beat in the playoffs, but I don't see them as a 1 seed, as a 2 seed. I don't see them as a favorite. I see them as basically what the Raptors were a couple of years ago, where they're a tough defensive-minded team who is a tough out in the playoffs. But I think, yeah, they're probably a second round out, maybe a conference final out, but they're not a team that really excites me.
Skip, those were some pretty good points about Lowry going there. I got to say, I'm looking forward to when, almost as much as Kyle Lowry coming back to Toronto at the Scotiabank, whatever you want to call it. I'm looking forward to him coming back. Even he's going to get emotional just to see him being the first Toronto Raptor to ever have his jersey retired, which is very well deserved. Even though there have been accusations in the league about possible tampering between him and Jimmy Butler. But if we're going to talk about tampering, now let's bring something up. Andrew Reece, the GM, cleaning out the Lakers 3 years in a freaking row, sending guys like Kuzma out. Don't even get me started on these guys. Bringing in Melo, bringing back Dwight Howard, bringing in Monk, bringing in Bazemore. Ariza even came back. Do you? Okay, can I ask you about LeBron doing this recruiting, and especially Melo, when Melo came out in the open and said, LeBron texted me and said, now it's time. What happened? Shout out to Robert Misovic. What about Hoodie Melo back then?
So I'm just gonna throw this out there with regards to what Skip said about the Heat. I'm gonna predict. This is my prediction. Tape it, show it to me later, like Shaq. I believe they'll be the best defensive team in the NBA next year. I think they'll allow the least amount of points in the NBA. That's as far as I'm going to go. But I think they will be the best defensive team, in the East at least, for sure.
So now tell me about the GM.
My message to LeBron is this. Old man river, that old man river. He must know something. He doesn't know nothing. That's my message to LeBron for the 3rd time, switching out the roster and bringing in Russell Westbrook, who can't shoot.
Here we go.
Good luck taking your 2 best defensive players out of the team, which was the number 1 rated team in the defensive team in the NBA, and replacing them with Westbrook, who needs the ball, who can't shoot, adding Dwight Howard, who's older than Brian, and, getting rid of Kuzma and Caruso. I do not like the fit for this team. They have a bunch of old injury-prone players, and here's the best one, Carmelo Anthony. 3 years ago, when Carmelo Anthony was crying on First Take because he couldn't get a job and he said he felt fired, LeBron wanted nothing to do with him then. Now, all of a sudden, yeah, it's time. Let's get it done. Let's get it done. You need a job. Let's get it done. Yeah, Carmelo Anthony's done. He's basically a spot-up three-point shooter. I believe this team will be injured most of the year. They'll make the playoffs, and then they'll get beat in a tough Western Conference. I think LeBron's time as GM has been pretty terrible. And I think he got lucky in the bubble when they had 4 months off because he's become injury prone the last couple of years. And, you know, they're trying the old way. The Lakers tried this before with Karl Malone and Gary Payton. How'd that work out?
Oh, my goodness.
They tried it with Steve Nash.
They tried it with Steve Nash and Dwight Howard.
Yeah.
Speak of the devil. And Nash, as you recall, got hurt in his first game. He broke his leg and never came back. I think he played 2 games. I stupidly bought his jersey. That just sits in my closet, brand new now. So maybe I guess LeBron didn't learn his lesson. He says keep that energy. I got lots of energy for LeBron because I don't drink wine while I'm doing my podcast. Okay.
Woo!
Yeah.
So I'm gonna keep that energy. Don't worry.
Can I get in on this? I'm gonna get in on this.
Yes.
So
Get in, Skip.
I think the Lakers, first of all, they're geriatric. I don't even know what they are. The Los Angeles nursing homes. Like, come on. Like, these guys are ancient. There's so many guys on that team that are past their prime, that are way past their prime. It's basically a 2011 All-Star team at this point. Lots of guys that should be retired already. What I see now, though, is that it's just, at this point, the team doesn't fit together. It's a mishmash of whatever you could throw at the wall. And it's kind of this theory of like, we'll throw enough spaghetti at the wall, like something's got to stick. They brought in like 10 guys on minimum salary contracts. 5 of those guys are going to fall flat on their face. They're going to get injured. They're going to get released. But there's just so many of them that they just need 2 or 3 of those guys to step up. Then again, like LeBron past his prime. He's really getting old. He's really getting injury prone. AD, injury prone. This team is going to be a mess all year. But here's what's going to happen. They're just going to have enough guys that rise from the dead, that have one last hurrah, that they're going to like just hang around, get into the playoffs. But I don't think they have that high upside of an old school LeBron team. I think, like you said, I think they're going to fall on their face in the playoffs. I don't think they're a serious threat. I think they're just this messy team that's just going to slog through the regular season and just do some stuff, but it's going to be a disaster all year. And I don't see it being a very good season.
I'll say this. It'll be fun to watch.
Yeah.
And I'm predicting 25 games, the over-under on LeBron and Westbrook yelling at each other.
Yeah, well, then it's going to be also a drama team for sure.
Yeah.
That goes.
Yeah, you like watching car crashes, don't you?
Yeah.
May I say something about this Los Angeles Lakers?
Yeah, go off.
I got a problem with this. I definitely have a huge problem. I've seen some of you bronzexuals out there saying, oh, this is going to be great for their... No, I'm thinking as a coach. You are going to see Russell Westbrook hold the ball for 11 seconds. Well, LeBron hold the ball for 11 seconds. Russell Westbrook hold the ball for 11 seconds. And in the words of Andrew Reece, Westbrick it. AD is going to have to come up with the rebound. Either he's going to put it back in or he's going to have to give it to Melo for an outside shot. There is no consistency. They are not coherent on this team. These guys are old. They are done. And my problem is all this BS tampering that LeBron has been doing. Why? Why has the league not gone after him for this? His best friend is Rich Paul, his agent. And just even last year, there were 6 players on that Lakers roster that were signed to Clutch Sports. So I have no empathy for this. I honestly hope the Lakers don't even make the playoff. I hope they can't do anything because Frank Vogel is not that good of a coach. It's basically LeBron GMing and calling the shots. because that's where he wants to retire when his son Bronny comes out. You know, Reece, last time you're wrong. We spoke about how these guys are so freaking egocentric when we talked about fake.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
When we spoke about that guy, your ambassador, these guys are so self-absorbed and so self-centered and egocentric. It's absolutely disgusting that LeBron needs all this. So when anybody out there, I've seen you guys online, anybody out there wants to talk to me about a super team, talking about Jordan. Okay, first of all, most of y'all that talk about that, you guys weren't even born to witness it, and that was not a super team. I would say the Pistons back then was a super team compared to them. So was the Celtics. So was the Lakers. And then you talk about KD jumping back and forth. A lot of people talk about these super teams that are being built. LeBron is trying to gain players on his roster so he can do less. To me, that's a cop-out. And again, now I'm losing more respect. And for Melo to go there, I understand Melo, he was on food stamps a while ago. Now he needs to cash in, even though it's only 2.6 mil. But he wants to get that elusive chip from that banana boat, which I say it ain't gonna happen. And speaking of former Lakers, speaking of Lakers that LeBron has flushed out, there is Lonzo Ball, who signed with the Chicago Bulls. There is Alex Caruso, that is now a part of the Chicago Bulls. Now, Andrew, I have to ask you, how do you feel about what LeBron did? And because of him, now these former players, let's not get into Brandon Ingram, Josh Hart, let's not get into all of these guys, this young talent, this great talent, instead of bringing in the geriatrics. These guys are out there and they're flourishing, and I'm not a fan of the Ball family. So how do you feel about these former Lakers going to Chicago and what they could possibly do out there?
Well, before I get to that, another pop prediction for you guys. The Lakers will be the worst free throw shooting team in the NBA.
Yeah, that's a fact. Dwight Howard.
Westbrook, Dwight Howard, LeBron James, even Anthony Davis. These guys are not good for you. If I'm an opposing team,
but they won't be good.
I'm hacking them all day long, and hopefully hurt them while I'm hacking them. As far as
hey man, if Dwight Howard's boy toy from Atlanta comes over to LA, that's the only time he's been shooting good. So, can you please answer my question about these former Lakers going to Chicago?
So we have Caruso. Who else went there? Caruso and who's the other Laker? Lonzo Ball, who's a New Orleans Hornet last year. Okay, so
Pelican.
Sorry, yes, a Pelican. Sorry, yes, I get them mixed up. Believe me, I'm old, so they were the Hornets before. Lonzo Ball and Caruso. I don't think Caruso's going to start now because they added DeMar DeRozan to the lineup, so I think he's coming off the bench for a large price. Caruso went to the Lakers, went to LeBron personally, and said, here's what Chicago's offering me. Do you want to match it? Said, go get your money, boy. So even though LeBron was Caruso's boy, he'd rather pay Carmelo Anthony 2.6 instead of Caruso for his great defense. But
2.6 for 1 year instead
what
of
I will say is this:
7 for 4.
The Bulls added defense. They were a horrible defensive team last year, and I mean horrible. So they added some defense with Caruso and Lonzo Ball. That mix, though, that is an ugly, ugly mix. I mean, I'm looking at volume shooting in DeRozan and Levine. They're going to be fighting over shots. And then you got Vucevic there, who's just sort of there. And how do you put him in a shoot-heavy offense? I mean, he can take threes, but he's a better player inside. And then, Lonzo, will he throw a bunch of alley-oops up? Maybe. Will he be able to facilitate the offense? Yes. He's a good three-point shooter. I'm very mixed on the Bulls. They seem like a very messed up team, a lot like the Lakers, except they're younger and might be able to work it out. But I don't like that mix in Chicago. Too many players with too many shots, and Lonzo Ball's got his work cut out for him to make that work. But what do you think, Skip?
Congratulations to DeMar DeRozan going to Chicago Bulls and finally getting his large payday. As a former Raptor, and you guys were Raptors fans, I think that's very well. Skip, how do you think DeMar DeRozan can perform in Chicago?
I think it'll be okay. I think there is a way that this roster can work, right? I think it does seem like a really messy fit to start with, but then you sort of think, well, Vooch is a really good passing big man. Lonzo can kind of play a whole different number of roles, where he's off ball or on ball. So there are ways where you can see like that lineup working pretty well in terms of where if DeRozan is getting spot up shots, that's a good thing, as long as they're not threes, because he can't shoot threes. If Levine's getting spot up threes, like that's a good situation. But it is still a bit of a messy cobbled together roster. Their starting power forward, I think, is Patrick Williams, who is basically a second-year player, has a lot of upside, was a lottery pick, but like that's a big burden to throw on that guy. And then I'm looking at the rest of the roster, and Caruso's off the bench, Kobe White's off the bench. Like they got some guards that come off the bench, but they've got no bigs. It's like behind Patrick Williams, they got nothing. I think they have Tony Bradley as their backup center. Like I'm not even sure if that's really what his role is going to be.
Markkanen will not be returning.
And Markkanen's leaving.
Yeah.
So they got no bigs. They've got not a lot of bench. So they really, really need that starting lineup to work and click. I think they're obviously better than they were last year. I think they had a lot of pressure to make the playoffs last year, and they fell flat on their face. So going out and getting these guys, they're going to have to push back past that 11 seed, 10 seed spot. But as far as being a real factor, a real threat, I think this is just going all in to make the playoffs, going all in to be a 6 seed. I think there are lots of problems on that team. There's defensive holes. There's DeRozan still not being a great three-point shooter. There's not a lot of bench depth. So it's not a team that I'm really excited to see, but I think the Bulls fans will finally get their playoff spot. And I think that's really all they're playing for at this point.
I don't think they're better than any of the teams that they didn't pass last year. So I don't think they're better than Boston. I don't think they're better than the Knicks. I don't think they're better than Atlanta, even with all those moves.
No, but they're better than the teams like the Hornets and the Pacers. Those are the teams that they're going to be passing.
Maybe they'll be battling us for the final spot. Who knows?
Yeah, I think they're a playoff team, but I don't think they're a good playoff team.
No.
Well, they ain't clowns.
Oh, they're early out. They'll be an early out.
I'm glad DeMar DeRozan got paid, because I'm going to say this. Dennis Schroeder, you've always been a joke to me. You're a joke. You turned down a 4-year, $84 million contract. Nobody signed you, except for the Celtics for 1 year, 5.9. Now, let me say this. As I'm ripping him, his wife, Elena, whatever your name is, I saw your post. You can't even spell the word self. So therefore, whatever you have to say, your argument is invalid. If you cannot spell a word properly, I can't listen to you. Okay? So, Dennis Schroeder, you're a joke. But Reece, you just did mention. Now, guys, let's get quick on this one here. You just did mention the New York Knicks. The New York Knicks signed Evan Fournier. They signed Tajay Gibson. They signed Nerlens Noel. They signed Kemba Walker, and they re-signed Derrick Rose. They look pretty good. How do you feel about that one?
They'll be the same as they were last year. I don't see marked improvement. I just see them continuing how they did last year, because I think they overachieved last year, and the signings will help them stay at the level they're at. A big question mark is Julius Randle. I loved Julius Randle last year. I thought he earned his contract, but he was god-awful in the playoffs. Almost as bad as Pascal Siakam was in the bubble. And so...
Again, another LeBron reject.
There are questions about him, and the rest of the roster has to improve. The rookies they have there that are really good in their second and third years. RJ Barrett, the guy they drafted last year, who was decent, are going to have to get it. Mitchell Robinson's in there. They have a lot of young players that if they improve, they could be better than expected.
They have a lot of talent. Skip, you have a few points on the New York Knicks. I would like to hear them, please.
I think Andrew just took the words right out of my mouth. I was going to say they were a 4 seed last year. I think these moves keep them as a 4 seed. It helps them guard against regression from some of their players. It just solidifies their spot. They're still not a dangerous team in the playoffs, but they're going to be a good team. They're going to be able to fend off the teams that are coming up behind them now. I think they're still going to need to make a move for a star if they want to contend. But they can be that middle-class team now going forward for a few years.
Well, speaking of, while we're staying in the East, another notable team was Washington attaining Kyle Kuzma.
And Spencer Dinwiddie.
Who else was in?
Spencer Dinwiddie.
Spencer Dinwiddie.
Yeah.
Yep. Who else was involved in that Kuzma trade, Skipper?
Westbrook.
Yeah. So, again, another thing LeBron had to do with the league, changing it around.
What?
Andrew,
I'm going to say this.
So, what?
Washington will be better. Washington will be better.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask you. Do you think they're going to take a step up now?
Now, how much better is the question? Like, they did make the play-in and the playoffs last year with Westbrook and Beal, but I actually think they might be slightly better with Dinwiddie and Kuzma and I believe some other pieces, because them together might be better than having just Westbrook there. So we'll see. It's a weak East outside of the top 3. So anybody can make the next 4 or 5 spots. So
do you guys have any other notable acquisitions during this offseason? Drew, is there anything else? Let's hit it quick.
I mean, everybody stayed pretty much where they were. The Raptors just re-signed everybody. We'll see if they get rid of Dragic. Golden State, the big rumor is they're going to go get Ben Simmons. I think that's a bad fit. I know Ben Simmons wants out of Philadelphia and does not want to come back. He is pissed to God heaven at the management and at Doc Rivers for calling him out, Joel Embiid calling him out for the playoffs. So he will not be a 76er come the start of the season.
We will do the episode when he's shipped out. Skip, are there any other notable acquisitions this offseason?
Just a lot of really small pieces getting shuffled around. Like I said at the top, it really feels like this offseason was all about re-signing your own players. I don't even think a single restricted free agent signed an offer sheet, let alone actually went anywhere. It was basically all sign-in trades, all guys getting their bag from their own front offices. And I think just in general about just want to cover the East real quick. I think a lot of people are saying the East got stronger this year, and I think it kind of did, but I think nothing really changed. It just teams solidified where they were.
Yeah.
So a lot of the teams that were kind of surprises last year,
thank you,
locked it down.
Reece, for coming back on. Thank you for coming back on the show, Andrew Reece. We really appreciate your analysis. You guys want to find him, you guys can find him on the Reece Report on YouTube and on Facebook. You guys can find Simon right there at Dougie J's on Twitter. It's baseball season. It's his favorite time of year. Like we all know, you can find him simonbroder.com, amazon.ca. Go check out the book, Running the Point. Very good read. You guys can find me, King Hussein, on all social media platforms. You guys can find us collectively on To The Point on Facebook and Instagram. You guys can find us as well on To The Point Raps on Twitter. You guys can find us, youtube.com/To The Point Podcast. This is great, Reece, man. You got me going with all this LeBron stuff, man. I can't wait till we really get into this. Go down there, click subscribe, click like, let us know what you guys think. Leave a comment. On behalf of myself, Simon, Andrew, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, good night, and
peace.